live on Facebook and then get started. But thanks so much for joining us today. If you are participating, your video is on, thank you. But if you are joining us to listen, feel free to use the chat for questions and comments with one another. All the panelists can see that. But just keep your video off and yourself muted so that everybody can be sure that they can see the folks who are speaking. And thanks so much for joining us today. We'll be back and get started in just 1 minute. Thanks. Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Delegate Brooke Learman, and I'm so delighted to have all of you here with me today, especially an awesome group of women who I'm so excited to hear from to talk about, what is going on in local government and their experience during the coronavirus epidemic. So I'm just going to start with a few comments, and then we're going to turn it over to all of you to hear from you and to educate all of us about what's going on, how we can be involved, and the future that you see and what we need to do to make sure we ensure a just recovery from this pandemic. So again, I'm Delegate Brooke Learman, and I represent, along with my teammates, Senator Bill Ferguson and Delegates Robin Lewis and Lou for the 46th District in Baltimore City, although of course we work at the state level to advance policies all around the state, many of which we're working on when the pandemic cut our session short in March, and looking forward to getting back to session to do more work. If there's one thing that the pandemic has done, besides cause so much unnecessary suffering and death, it's really clarified, I think, the pre-existing inequities that exist in our society, and really the lack of resilience oftentimes in our communities and state government institutions to support families and small businesses in a way that we need. I've been delighted to be holding webinars since the pandemic cut our General Assembly short on a range of issues, from bridging the digital divide to public education, redlining, how to apply for benefits. And this coming Thursday, the last one in July, will be with some of our university presidents, including UMBC president, Oregon State, Towson, and the Chancellor of the University System of Maryland, Jay Perman. So excited about that. But why today? Why are we here today talking with these amazing local elected leaders? In case you didn't notice, we're all women here today. And today, this month, or next month, August, will commemorate the centennial anniversary of women's suffrage and the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which extended voting rights legally to all women, although of course there were still decades to go until Black women were able to secure the right to vote because of Jim Crow laws and other systematic racism that kept people back. And while we're honoring those who came before us and did so much work, including the late Congressman John Lewis, to ensure voting rights for all of us, it's essential that we continue to lift one another up in the continuing fight for equality. I think I was reminded of that more than ever last week watching AOC, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, on the floor of the House of Representatives, stand up and explain why it's not okay, even if you have a daughter or a wife, to insult women, and if you do, why you have to apologize in advance. Here in Maryland, We rank 6th in the nation in the proportion of women elected to the state legislature. And we have some amazing organizations, including Emerge Maryland, that is doing its best to help train and recruit Democratic women to run for office. And we are all Emerge sisters. We are all graduates of the Emerge program, different years throughout the program, but really glad to have met one another through that powerful and power-building network. So, behavior and words matter, and I'm excited to have this discussion with fellow female leaders to talk about their unique experiences during this COVID crisis in ways we can all help one another in the coming months. So delighted to turn it over. I think first we're going to hear from Allison Pickard. She is serving her first term as a county council member in the Anne Arundel County Council. She's made economic development and smart redevelopment in the county her top priority. And she has helped identify targeted areas in the county that would benefit from redevelopment, creating opportunities for more small businesses and affordable housing, while also ensuring fair housing protections for seniors and lower income constituencies. Denise Mitchell. Denise serves as District 4 City Council member for the City of College Park. Denise is an early childhood administrator and consultant and currently works with programs in the USDA CACFP program. She previously served on the City Council from 2009 to 2013 and as Mayor Pro Tem from 2013 to 2015. So you are the veteran among us, Denise.
No.
Thank you. Jessica Fitzwater made history as a member of the first ever Frederick County Council, one of only 2 women under 40 serving in county elected office, elected leadership in the state of Maryland. During her tenure on the council, she's championed the successful effort to repeal Frederick County's English-only ordinance, introduced legislation to improve affordable workforce housing, created a human trafficking task force, and supported county budgets that invest in public education, public safety, and community partnerships. Christiana Rigby is District 3 County Council member for Howard County. Her Howard County roots run deep, and the vision of Jim Rouse has had a profound influence on her principles and values. Born and raised in District 3 off Shaker Drive, and she attended Atholton Elementary, Hammond Middle, and is a graduate of Hammond as well. It's great to have you with us. Thanks for being here. And Shannon Sneed lives just a few blocks from me, and yet here we are on Zoom seeing one another. Shannon is the Baltimore City Councilwoman for District 13. On the council, Shannon is a fierce advocate for the residents of District 13. She stands up for transparency and fairness in city government and fights for policies that protect the hardworking men and women of Baltimore City. I'm thrilled to be here with all of you today. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to turn it over to Allison to kick us off. And we're just going to start with sort of, maybe describe your district a little bit, your role, and how your role has changed since COVID started, what you see is happening since this started, and we'll keep it quick so we can get through everyone and we'll move on to some questions. And again, if you have questions for these women leaders, feel free to share them in the chat. Thanks. Turn it over to you, Councilwoman Pickard.
Thank you, Delegate Learman, and I apologize if my audio goes a little wonky, but we're competing in my house for broadband.
Understood.
I'm the recently elected in 2018. This is my first term in elected office. I had previously served my community on the Board of Education in Anne Arundel County, and have been a veteran PTA mom at my children's elementary school. So my district encompasses sort of the heart of the north part of Anne Arundel County, Glen Burnie, Millersville, and Severn. We have a lot of the older established neighborhoods and older commercial corridors, including Baltimore Washington Medical Center and an urban town center in the heart of Glen Burnie. We also have the largest need for school construction. So I'm battling all fronts here as a councilwoman. But, since taking office, when in my first year, I was the vice chair of the council, which teed me up to this past December becoming the chair of the county council, which is an interesting year to be chair of the county council when COVID hit in March, and we took a pause in Anne Arundel County and took our council all virtual, including creating an online testimony tool for constituents. I feel we've done a really amazing job. I can tell you this council flipped from 7 men in 2018 to a supermajority of women. I'd like to say that the collaboration we're needing to get through this has helped with all of us women. I'm not going to say anything about men, but it has been a real collaborative effort to continue business under COVID-19 and work with all facets of county government to make sure that we don't miss a beat. I mean, we just passed a $1.8 billion budget all virtually, and these are challenging times, and the collaboration effort is so key to keeping our citizens safe and business going. I'll leave it at that.
That's great, thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Denise.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again, Delegate Learman, for inviting me today to be a part of this fantastic panel. I feel like the little kid in the room. I should be on the side listening instead of being on the panel, and I'm glad to be with my Emerge sisters as well, Christina and Allison. I am a city council member from the city of College Park, representing District 4. District 4 is in the western part of College Park. We're right behind University of Maryland, which is also encompasses the infamous golf course. That's where I reside, and my district consists of about approximately 3,600 residents there that I am responsible for listening to, including students at the University of Maryland. Yes, this is my second stint, and I would say what is different from my first stint to this stint, being from 2017 president, is that this is the most diverse council that we've had. We have more women on the council and persons of color, which I'm very excited about for
Great.
College Park. That is fantastic.
Yep.
And we hope to continue that going into our next election cycle in 2021. I think that when we talk about being an elected official, I see my role as being one who's a communicator and a bridge builder. And we can sit at the table and talk about all the policies you want to, but when COVID-19 came upon us, it was a time for us to think out of the box. How do we actually make sure that our residents are still getting services that they needed, such as trash pickup, such as parking enforcement, such as even to the fact of making sure food is being delivered. So we really had to think out of the box, and I think for me being on the council, having collaborative relationships at the state and federal level helped us really to make sure our services were still being continued today as we move on today. So I will stop there. There's much more I can say, but I'm glad again to be here today.
Thank you for that. And Jessica.
Well, like everyone else, I'll echo my thanks to Delegate Learman for putting this together, and really for all of your briefings this summer. I have had the opportunity to hop on a couple of them and have found them to be extremely valuable. So you bringing the level of policy expertise to the masses, to whoever is interested, is really greatly appreciated. So I, as Delegate Learman said, I represent District 4 on the Frederick County Council. That district includes about half of Frederick City, the eastern half of Frederick City, and then some of the surrounding county around that. So really the central part of Frederick County. And as many of you probably know, Frederick County is actually the largest county in the state of Maryland, which means that we have such a great diversity in what our county can offer. We have a rich cultural and historic legacy here. We have beautiful farmlands, lots of open park space, but we also, that means it's a lot of ground to cover, and that depending on where you live in the county, your issues and concerns can really be quite different. And that's nothing, that aspect hasn't changed with this pandemic, but as we know, it's just magnified gaps in service, issues that certain communities are facing. It's just been magnified even more. And so I would say, in terms of, local governing here during the pandemic, I was elected in 2014 and re-elected in 18. So this is my second term. We have a different a very different council makeup this time around, which we are much more civil, collegial, and productive. I'll just leave it at that. But that has been phenomenal, and it has been really important moving through this new time that we're in. As Allison talked about moving virtual meetings to being virtual meetings, making sure that we have opportunities for public engagement was very important to all of us. And I think that this is an opportunity for local governments to be more inclusive moving forward. I mean, hoping we're all in person sometime soon. Having these virtual options really opens it up for more people to be engaged in their local government. People are watching our meetings and calling in to give comment that maybe couldn't make it to Winchester Hall to do comment in person. And so that side of this has been really valuable, and I hope that's something that we'll take moving forward. Allison also mentioned doing a budget. That was our first big action we had to take in a virtual world, and that was very challenging, but we did our best to make sure that the public was involved, that information was available, and it's been okay. We'll get, I think, more in the questions what some of the big issues are that have been coming to us, so I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you. Christiana?
Like a serial unmuter, or like
Yeah, I understand.
I always leave myself on mute.
It's better to be muted than not, right? I mean,
True. At least I'm doing it the mute on way.
Right.
But so this is also my first term on the county council, and I would say I think that the biggest there's the logistical shift of how you do the work, but there's also sort of the urgency shift of the different pieces. So I want to say we introduced it at the end of February, but it was our right of first refusal bill for the housing commission, so that they could have an opportunity to purchase properties that multifamily properties that go up for sale, that they would have a legitimate chance of purchasing them. Well, pandemic happened, so we tabled it, and it was the kind of bill where it was needed before, but now there's a real sense of urgency, and people, I think the holes are real in our safety net are really being exposed for a lot of people who either may not have been paying attention before, or who just may not have really seen it. And so I think that the urgency is one of the biggest things that has changed, and the difference of engagement that people have had on different issues has been heartwarming.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I think it has been really interesting. I mean, many of us knew, right, that affordable housing, that we were in a crisis situation beforehand, but now it's in the news every day, which because it's such an urgent crisis and it's affecting so many people. So yeah, no, absolutely. Shannon, the going.
Hi everyone, and so thank you for having me. It's right what you were saying about how we knew we had a housing problem, how we knew there were like so many issues that we had been talking about for Baltimore City for a number of years. While it's only 3 women, 4 women now on the council, when I first started out, I was one of 3 women on the council, one of the younger voices on the council, and I felt like I was grassroots level in the community, a part of different organizations, connected so through family and friends. And so I've been hearing like that's why I ran for office, to address many of the issues. When you talk about the nurses in our neighborhoods and the people who actually drive the buses, like these are my neighbors that work in the supermarkets, and how do we protect them? How do we protect our families? So from that point, I think automatically we went into what do we need to do to protect them? And so we put in different legislation to help right away. We also, my staff and I called around to as many constituents as possible just to make sure that they had access to medication. Like me, myself, on my own, was taking some seniors to the supermarket and to the pharmacies. And even taking advantage of jumping out because they didn't want to get out. At first, it wasn't enough information, I felt like, and you didn't know what to do. And we didn't want to put anyone in harm's way. So that's just a little bit about how we've been working in District 13, just being hands-on For the folks who don't have technology, it's been so hard because they are not able to log on to see these hearings. And so it's been such a barrier that we've been talking about for a long time. And now people actually see it, not just for the folks who have technology, from understanding now my children have to be on technology and it's not enough bandwidth and it's not enough X, Y, and Z. So I feel like COVID has not, that I know of, it has touched everyone. No one has been the exception to get out of COVID. So that's what I'm sad and kind of like thankful for, because now you understand what the regular person is going through in Baltimore City and across the country.
Yeah, no, that's very well said. I saw something saying somewhere that I've adopted, which is that, you know, with COVID, we are all in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. And, you know, some people's boats don't hook up to the internet. Some people's boats don't have roofs, right? I mean, there's, you know, it's, so yes, we're all here in the same storm, but we're experiencing it in incredibly different ways because of pre-existing issues that, you know, we all knew about, but they didn't make the front page on a regular basis. So that, you've already brought up some of these issues, but what are sort of like the top 2 or 3, you know, maybe we'll keep it to top 2 issues that you're being contacted about by your constituents, or that, you know, maybe your constituents aren't talking to you about it, but it is like one of the biggest issues in your county or city, so it's something that is like a top level issue. Where are folks on that? Feel free to just jump in. Go ahead.
I can't even unmute myself again. So I think the 2 biggest things that we've heard about are essentially schools and childcare. And I'm the only person on our council with kids in our public schools, so it's, you know, I definitely experience the issue differently as the mom of a kindergartner. But if anything, I hope that, you know, people often talk about what's the backbone of our economy, and I think that everybody hopefully now realizes that schools are the backbone of our economy. And so that, I would say, is one of the number one things, you know, especially, I mean, everything, the whole spectrum of school, in person, out of person, but especially for families that have 2 sort of essential workers who have same shifts, we just do not have anything set up for 7-year-olds. If you think about it, you have to be at least 8. Stay at home on your own. You don't have commercial childcare available for 7-year-olds because, generally speaking, a 7-year-old's in 1st grade. So there's just all of these systemic struggles that people are facing that they didn't plan on facing because they weren't planning on a pandemic. So schools and all of the various issues related to school and childcare, and then evictions, and people very concerned about their housing. I mean, those are that we hear the most.
For me, Denise, this is Denise in College Park. For us, again, it's schools, and we have it at 2 fronts. We have, again, the child care situation and children going back to school, and some of them don't have the laptop and computers in addition to the Wi-Fi in order to do the online format. Then number 2, we have the students at the University of Maryland. Some of you heard the problem that we had with some of the football players have been tested positive. Some of the students have, unfortunately, are testing positive. So that's another issue that we're dealing with, trying to work with the university as well. But I also would say that our seniors, a lot of residents, a lot of people are concerned about our seniors as they age in place, making sure that they have what they need as far as services, getting their medication, and then also talk about housing. Those who don't have housing and those who are unemployed, wondering how they're going to pay their property taxes in order to survive another year. So that's a lot of questions I've been seeing.
Anyone else?
I'll hop in. I mean, was going to say, I mean, Christiana's right on. The school question is what everyone's talking about. And it's not just because of wanting to ensure the best quality education for our kids, but we are seeing the ripple effect of these decisions. No matter what the decision is, it creates more questions that we don't have answers to, partially because we don't know enough about this disease, but also because we don't have systems in place to handle this. But these are issues we've known are there. This country has been not investing in public education as it should for decades. We've known that there is a child care crisis, and now it's just magnified. We know that there's a housing crisis, and it's magnified. So the schools, I think, obviously because August and September are right around the corner, is on everyone's minds, but also because these decisions just impact everything else that touches families. I was also going to talk about housing and with that, the challenges, and with the childcare as well, the challenges of using the CARES funding and money that's coming down from the federal and state government. As we know, all of those things have strings attached, and certain ways you can use it and certain things it can be used for. And I know that our county executive is working right now on trying to figure out some sort of grant program for childcare providers, but the CARES funding requires it to be reimbursement based. Well, that might work for larger centers, but that's not going to work for an at-home daycare provider. They don't have that kind of overhead. And so we're just constantly, trying to be creative and looking at resources and trying to partner with, community agencies and nonprofits, which we have in our rental assistance program. We're partnering with our Religious Coalition for Emergency Human Needs because they have a rental assistance program already. They have these processes in place. And so I think that has been really a great thing, that we have these relationships already with some of those groups, and we can build on those during this time. And the last issue I would say that has been coming to me, I mean, there's a lot, but another one that comes to mind that hasn't been mentioned as much really is access to information in communities where English isn't their first language. They don't, as Shannon said, have as good access to maybe reliable internet. It's certainly shining a light on the poor job that we have done already in making sure that critical information is accessible to everyone in our community, and especially when we're in the middle of a health crisis, and especially when information is changing so quickly. If we don't have processes in place to get information out in Spanish quickly, by the time we have a video ready, guidance has changed. Things have changed. And so that's definitely something that I think we are working on, but not as quickly as we maybe should be. And it's definitely something that I've been hearing a lot about and been trying to advocate for.
That's interesting. I represent most of the District 46 includes most of the communities in the city that have a high proportion of Latino immigrants, and we've been having to really come at it in a different way. And we've worked through Casa de Maryland and Centro Sol and community-based organizations, and so you're totally right. So everybody pretty much talked about education, and of course funding for our schools, right, is a pre-existing, low funding for our schools, inadequate funding for our schools is a pre-existing condition, if you will, to where we are now. And it's interesting. Some folks have talked about the blueprint for Maryland's future, and now are we going to override the governor's veto? Is it too much? To me, it feels like this is a reason, right? The pandemic just provides extra reasoning for overriding the governor's veto and supporting education dollars. I don't know where all of you all are on that, but if anybody has a comment, happy to hear your thoughts on the blueprint or education dollars and increasing education dollars.
Well, Delegate, I don't mind chiming in a little bit, not necessarily directly about the blueprint, but we've relied on low investment in education, and yet as a society, at least I think I'm speaking not just for Anne Arundel County, we expect everything from the school system, everything. So we want them to be the savior, and expect them, and then make them out to be the scapegoat. But we don't give them the resources to do that. Whether it's communities in schools, there's lots of different ways to utilize school in the community as differently than we do now. Class size is an issue in Anne Arundel County. Get caught up in state-rated capacity, and then don't think about the actual. One is capital budget, the other is operating budget with how many teachers are in a school, and then we want teachers to turn on a dime when we shut down schools and be able to educate those 35 third graders from their home with their toddler on their lap. Yep. And getting to all the proper core learning that are expected. I mean, it's unreal what we expect from our public schools, and yet we can't seem to fund them. But just like everything else that everyone else has said today, this pandemic has just made crystal clear the numerous crises that we're in, whether it's housing, childcare, public schooling, even our wage structure. I mean, federal minimum wage is still $7.25. It's just highlighted all these things that we've not tackled productively from every level of government. Here in Anne Arundel County, we, as county council people, because people knew who I was, they were coming to myself and my staff about their unemployment, which we had to then bridge relationships with state level folks who have a little more contact.
Yeah.
That, and then all these different guidelines and restrictions, and Anne Arundel County, like many of the larger counties, were a little more strict for longer than the governor. So just better coordination on all fronts.
Yeah.
These are really trying times to be in public office.
Yep. Many of you have really, many of your jurisdictions have done some creative things too. So, what are there a couple examples of programs or initiatives or locally driven efforts that you could share as sort of best practices or good ideas that you think have reached people and worked?
So right away we put in a ban that said that we weren't going to allow people to be put out their homes. We also make sure that we had a process in place to help get a number of homeless people off the street so it wouldn't spread. We also used money in Baltimore City to make sure that was for youth. This youth funding bill that actually went towards feeding some of our students here in Baltimore City. And then on the education side, we've been totally pushing for passing resolutions. We're hoping to be the bully pulpit to make sure that our students have the technology that they need through Comcast. And so just making sure that they have hotspots, or so a whole bunch of them won't fall through the cracks. So those are different policies that we put in place from day one. But I hope we're working on, when we talk about jobs also, how I've gotten a lot of phone calls, help me preserve my job. I don't know if I'll have a job. Right now there is a hotel that's selling their hotel to another person or another business, and so all the employees are scared that they'll lose their job. Like, can you think of any legislation? Is there any way to help us? So that's how we've been doing it.
In Anne Arundel, we were quick to actually get ahead of our CARES Act funding and pull some money from our local development council to start our rental assistance program, which has been a lifesaver. I mean, we've helped thousands of families and continue to add funds to the rental assistance program. That and small business grants with our COVID dollars, helping small businesses retool themselves for their online, however they're going to break down the barriers to getting back to business. We also were, I think, the first in the state. We're utilizing school nurses to staff the contact tracing. So we've been up and running with contact tracing with COVID, and while also keeping our school nurses working. And then we've had really good public-private partnerships there's a program called Feed Anne Arundel, where we're helping restaurants stay in business. They're providing meals to our most vulnerable citizens, and COVID dollars are paying the restaurants to provide those meals. So sort of a 2-for-1, we're keeping people fed and restaurants in business.
In College Park, we have also taken, and our budget is really small in comparison to the counties. Our budget is only approximately $20 million, but with that, we took $1 million set aside and had a grant program that one dealt with helping those who were possibly being evicted, rent support, as well as we did have opportunities for our businesses to have to submit for a grant. Help them to help for payroll purposes, or even just to do, we're doing gift cards for our citizens to go down to College Park to actually go to some of the restaurants in order to keep them safe.
Yep, that's great.
I wanted to say it's great hearing some of these ideas. The Frederick County is doing some similar things to Anne Arundel in terms of our rental assistance. We're calling them Jumpstart grants for small businesses, and we also really targeted the micro businesses or sole proprietors and also farmers, to make sure that they can have at least something to help them keep going. And we are also partnering, we've also been working with the school system, and we sort of in our budget, which everyone had a crazy budget cycle, we had some money just earmarked for COVID that it was so early, not knowing what that might be needed for and not knowing when CARES funding would come down. And kind of when we got the CARES funding, saw what we were able to spend it on, we had a little more flexibility with this county money, and we are working with the school system to purchase Chromebooks and everything that goes along with that to try to and the county's doing that, recognizing that that's just such a critical need right now. So some of those partnerships and partnering with our nonprofit community who has just stepped up, I can't even put words to it, in terms of grocery distributions and meals for kids and all of that. And it's just been pretty amazing to see, but we can't allow there to be burnout. We can't rely too heavily, I think, on this. We need to recognize that government's role in these services and in these protections and start making a better plan for the future as things move forward.
Yeah, great examples and ideas. I mean, it's interesting. The food one and the restaurants, I think, really reconceiving how the food system works and how we can apply used dollars, whether they're nonprofit dollars or government dollars, to both help restaurant workers and distributors of food distributors, and then get the foods where it needs to be. That's actually the same model that Jose Andre and World Central Kitchen are promoting. And in Baltimore, they've been supporting, I want to say 15 restaurants that then they're able to, those restaurants donate the food to community groups to give out. So, I mean, I would love to see efforts like that expanded and have government take over. I mean, not totally take over, but at least provide money while we need it, because it's such a great way to keep people working, keep the system operating, and to get healthy, fresh meals into the hands of people who might not have access. So that's interesting that you guys are doing that in the county. Sorry, did I interrupt you, Councilwoman Rigby?
No, I was just going to add, I mean, Howard County's done a lot of similar things like rental assistance, but we, as a result of the floods in Ellicott City, we had organized our community organizations active in disaster, our COAD, and this was certainly the time to really get the COAD up, because it's something that becomes activated in disaster and then goes back down when it's not. And they have really been instrumental in working with us, and we do a lot of partnering with them for whether it's rent relief or food distribution or whatever the need is. We've really been working with our nonprofit community closely to be able to be agile, because one of the things we've learned in the last year and a half is that government's pace is certainly not one that I am used to. It takes a while to get all of the ducks in a row before something can move forward. And our nonprofits are just able to be a little bit more nimble in that space than we necessarily are.
Christina, I'm 6 years in and I still struggle with the pace, so I hear you on that.
I was like, that's a nice way of saying it.
That is a nice way of saying it. The Feed on Arundel program started in Annapolis, and they have done a wonderful job. But I do think the insertion of the county into that with the private sector allowed for them to look beyond certain neighborhoods and make sure, I mean, for me, who represents North County, I wanted to make sure not only North County citizens were benefiting from that, especially if county dollars were involved, but also that North County restaurants were involved. And so that has allowed those conversations to take place when the county has joined in a partnership. And I think that is really important, because while, local government does have a role, not just hoping for the best, that nonprofits are going to be in all of our vulnerable neighborhoods and helping all of our small businesses. So It's been a real eye opener, but I feel like we've done really well. I mean, sometimes you only hear on social media the two opposite ends, but you have to sometimes turn it off and just see what's happening for yourself and listen to the folks who are not screaming from either one side or the other.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I will say I live in Fells Point, where we have a number of restaurants and retailers, and I've been wanting outdoor dining and less driving and less parking for years, and now all of a sudden everybody's in favor of parklets and outdoor dining, and it's like yes. But I mean, it's also just necessary. It's the only way they're going to survive. So yeah, it's so interesting. So somebody in the chat, or Mia in the chat, asked, what do you think of the newly proposed Senate HEALS Act? Do you think it will provide the relief people need? What do you think is missing? I mean, I'll say off the top of my head, one of the big pieces missing is there's no money for state or local governments. I mean, it's incredible to me that Senate Republicans, I mean, they represent localities too. So I was pretty shocked to see that, but I don't know if any of you have taken a look at it and what your thoughts are on the HEALS Act versus the Democrats' HEROES Act.
It honestly made me wonder if they know they're the only ones that can borrow against themselves.
Yeah. Do they want to make money? Yeah.
Right. Like the state and local governments, you have to balance. You cannot borrow against yourself. The federal government is the only entity capable of doing a national investment, and they are walking away. And I don't understand how they are looking forward down the future and expect this country to recover if they are not working with state and local governments to provide investments in critical infrastructure like our schools. I was so appalled by that part that I'm still digesting that and what that means before I could even dig into the rest. I was shocked, honestly.
I agree. I haven't read all the ins and outs of this latest legislation, but I can say the CARES Act that we received, the CARES Act dollars that Anne Arundel received, if they could just retool some of those strings, it would help. And they've already given it to us, but if we would be allowed to use it in a more wide way, we could solve some of our own problems with what we've already been given. Not saying local governments and state governments don't need more, because I'm sure we do, but it would be helpful to be able to use that first
Tranche of money.
Yeah. Well, jumping into what I mean, I completely agree with you guys, and I'm also not familiar with every change in the Republican version, but that is crazy that that's not part of it, because it's so critical right now, and we can't, and maybe this is what Allison was getting at, but we can't use the CARES funding it has to be pandemic related, but all of us had to pass budgets where we didn't fund a whole lot of stuff that needed to be funded, not related to the pandemic, because we were working with such reduced revenue projections. And what was proposed in the HEROES Act gave us that freedom. You can use it to supplement government services, programs, whatever, that were impacted by this loss of revenue, and we just desperately need that. In Frederick County, there are critical IT positions, not something people want to talk a lot about, but think about the world we're living in now. Our folks are now responsible for more hardware, more software, more security issues. We haven't added staff to that department in quite a long time. In areas of public safety and first responders, so many things that we have already been behind on, and then couldn't fund what we were going to do, and so the money is so desperately needed, and it is pretty shocking anymore, but it is very disappointing that that's the case.
Yep, agreed. And they also know they cut the unemployment benefit, the extra benefit, from $600 to $200 because Republicans are concerned that people are not incentivized to go back to work. And I find one of the things what's so fascinating and sort of horrifying about that is that people are not able to work right now, right? Much of the economy is still shut down. And so we don't want people necessarily to get out and go out and look for new jobs, because it's still the only safe thing to do in some areas is to still stay at home. And certainly we're seeing, our numbers rise all over the country. So it's a scary time. So I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. It's 2:45. So last question is, so what are some lessons for government do you hope we take from this era? What can we take from now so that, we will be in office for a few years? What are the things that we should be doing better moving forward so that we don't find ourselves in this situation again? And we'll set aside, we should have a president who believes in science and wants to give clear public health dictum, right? We'll leave that aside, that's one. But at a local level, what are some of the things that how can we learn from today and position our local governments so that they're in a stronger place moving forward?
I'm going to take it back to education. I feel like our students should never suffer no matter what we go through. And so the fact that we had to get computers to them, that we had to figure out how to tap into different sources, I feel like through this, our students, and to be able to learn no matter what, should always be the top priority. And so I hope that we have learned through this in Baltimore City that our students come first. They are our priority. And for them to grow up to be successful citizens, we got to make sure that they get everything that they need while they're in school, and that nothing conflicts with that. And so no matter where we are, they should be able to learn in school or at home. There has to be, it can't stop. And so that's what I hope that we learn from.
I'll jump in. I concur with Councilor Sneed about education. Kids are they're the most important thing, and they are our future. We should not compromise it at all. I know we're fortunate enough in College Park to have College Park Academy, which is an online program. And a lot of people come into us and ask us about how is that online format being implemented, and our students are doing great with that. But I think also beyond that, as far as lessons learned, is to be forward thinking and forward thinking to the point that you're not being reactionary all the time. You already have some type of plan in place, so you don't have to panic because this is happening. There's an A, there's a B, there's a C place. So I think that's what I have learned. And I think I'm taking that truly to heart personally in my life, that you really have to be forward thinking.
Thank you.
For me, I think for those of you who don't already know this, I'm also a teacher. I've just finished my 15th year being an elementary music teacher, which teaching elementary music on the computer is what do you do? Especially in the spring when in Frederick County, we weren't doing like Google Meets or face-to-face till much towards the end because the system hadn't really evaluated privacy and security issues and things like that. I was starting to get better at it just as the kids were starting to not really tune in as much. But I think, the investments in education is key. In Frederick County, before this county council and executive came in, we had 6 years of maintenance of effort funding of flat, which is basically in the negative because it doesn't, you all know, doesn't take into account even inflation or anything. So the hole that we were digging out was so big, and we have funded above MOE every single year by millions of dollars, and we are still just not dug out of that hole. Our new teacher salaries were 24th out of 24 jurisdictions in Maryland when we came in, and we're the 8th, might even be the 7th wealthiest county in Maryland now. So we have before this serious work to do in terms of investing in our school system, and so for sure that's a priority. The other things for me that are clear is I've always been an advocate for more tools for attracting affordable workforce development projects to Frederick County, thinking outside of the box on how we can make sure that we're building a diverse, of types of housing, that we're looking across the county, not just in Frederick City. So we, I think, have made progress, but we have more room to grow. And now looking at rental issues too, I actually have a draft bill to do what Shannon and Christiana did with rent freezes, although I know there's been some challenges. I've actually learned from your all's processes, which has been helpful, and the city of Frederick just passed their own ordinance to freeze rent for up to 180 days after the state of emergency is over, and I'm working on getting that bill on our agenda as soon as possible. I just actually was sending the draft to our staffers today. So I think there's a lot of room for growth with affordable housing. But the last thing I wanted to say too, at least for me, that I've really have been a learning for me during this period, is we cannot wait until a crisis like this to start listening to our vulnerable populations, to start listening to Black and Brown communities, to start listening to people who already, who are working full-time and are barely able to make ends meet. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the United Way's ALICE report, Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. In Frederick County, over 1/3 of families are ALICE, and of course it's disproportionately, single parent households, it's disproportionately our Black households and our Latino households. So we knew already that we had this problem, but we weren't making it a priority to listen to those people. And I'm excited because I'm hearing people be more empowered to share their stories, frankly, because they don't have a choice, right? So we have to start listening, and we need to make it a priority for government to be not just responding, but just making that a part of what we're doing. And that's something that's certainly been very much on my mind as we move through this time.
I think it's interesting, this is Allison Pickard, that we've had to really, local government agencies have had to step out of their silos and really be truly collaborative to tackle some of these massive challenges. And I hope we continue to do that as we, move towards more what was normal. I know I'm watching housing legislation in Frederick. I've just been given information about what you were talking about, Christiana, about first opportunity to buy for affordable housing. Like, I always look outside of myself. I didn't get elected and all of a sudden I'm an expert on all topics.
Right.
So
yeah, absolutely.
I think as local government, we need to be more collaborative within ourselves and not so siloed. And I hope we've learned those lessons. And also, we are the last stop. And so I hope this has informed the public that local government is probably working on issues that are closest to your daily lives and to engage them more. I have big legislation coming up in September, and we're not having as many community meetings, so I'm having to go out and find my community folks to engage them so that I don't miss out on those opportunities to talk about the impactful things that we are doing. And so I don't think we'll be giving up our Zoom licenses anytime soon, because it's an amazing tool to reach the public, rather than asking them to come out to Annapolis or come over here after soccer practice. We can reach people and connect with people this way, and it's quite powerful, I think. So we've learned a lot about how technology, Anne Arundel County our council was in the dark ages. We were so reliant on paper, and we've had to quickly step up, and we have a long way to go to make sure we get through this trying times, but collaboration is key.
Yeah, I mean, what everybody said, except the only thing I think I could add is that, it feels like we're going through multiple crises at the same time. We're going through a public health crisis. We're certainly going through a civil rights and civil liberties crisis, because not everybody's rights are being treated the same. And we have a climate crisis, which again has disproportionate impacts. It's your storm boat analogy. When you sent this question, I had a really nice snappy answer, but given the group of women on this call, I'm just gonna quote Frozen 2 and Anna when, actually I guess the troll king, but he basically says that, when the future is unclear, all you can do is the next right thing. And so I think focusing on how we approach policy by doing the next right thing, so that way we can start, rebuilding, but in a more just way. So that it's not just going back to the system that used to be, it's that we've really had a collaborative approach and have a system that's working for everybody moving forward.
Well said. I appreciate that. Everybody, great comments, and I feel good knowing that you're out there leading in our local governments and doing the work that you're doing, and it's you have wonderful collaborative relationships with your state delegates, like I do with my city council member, like Councilwoman Sneed, and so it's also important that we continue to work together at every level of government to make sure we're meeting the needs of all of our shared constituents and the folks around the state. And I think there's been a lot of talk recently about the systemic challenges and systemic racism, and sometimes I think we have to remind ourselves that those systemic problems exist because of government policies, right? And the only way to unmake some of those challenges is through passing government programs or amending government policies so that, as you said, Councilwoman Rigby, we can do the next right thing. Well, thank you, all of you, so much for joining today. I've got to, before you leave me, got to get a picture with all of you because, I don't get you all in one place very often. So everybody smile, and I will try to